Hi again then guys, and welcome to another episode of a tuning series which we haven't visited in quite some time. This was a very popular series, but it is one of the shorter tuning series that I've done. And the series is, as of course you'll have seen from the title, X Tunes. Now for those who are maybe newer to the channel and are unfamiliar with these setups, basically what we do is we take a car, usually a premium model, but sometimes a non-premium, and it's got to be a vehicle with really high potential in terms of power, torque, weight, and PP level, and of course, by definition, it's a pretty fast car. Then what we do is we fully upgrade everything on the car to make it the ultimate version that it can possibly be. But not just in a straight line, because of course top speed tunes are great in terms of straight line performance, but they don't necessarily give you the best handling. The difference with X tunes is it combines the best of both. Not necessarily the highest top speed, but much higher top speed than you'd have at say the 550 pp level, but with the handling that you typically wouldn't get from a drag build or from a top speed build. So the ultimate form that the car can take. And in the case of this vehicle, the Shelby GT500 Mustang, its ultimate form is pretty impressive. 664 pp is ridiculously high for a muscle car. That's far beyond the Lamborghini Aventador, and I believe, if memory serves, it does have the highest pp level of any muscle car in the game. Now, as far as the visual tuning goes, as you can see, it is pretty heavily modified, but there's only one thing which really matters, and that is the flat floor. All of the other parts are totally down to you. Just fit whatever you want. Wings, rims, body kits, paint, it doesn't matter at all. The only thing that does matter is, as I said, fitting that flat floor, because it increases the PP level and, of course, the grip and downforce. So, next up, of course, is the mechanical side of things, which we'll run through now, and then finally we'll take it out to Laguna Seca to see what this car performs like in its peak form. Now, as far as the setup on this vehicle goes, it's pretty simple as far as upgrades. Basically fit everything you possibly can to the vehicle. Now, I've fitted racing soft tyres, as I pretty much always do to these builds, because again, it's the best setup you can possibly have, the best tyres you can buy. Some people don't like racing softs, they consider it to be too easy. That's fair enough, but that's kind of the point of this tune. You're trying to make it as quick as physically possible. But if you don't want them, that's fair enough. As far as suspension, I have opted to level out the ride height, because the GT500 has what I would call a snowplow setup, where the front end is very low and the back end is higher. Personally, I hate that look on vehicles, so I've leveled it out, so it's even front and rear. In order to do that, you need the front end to be 30mm higher than the back. Now, if you don't mind that, of course you could take it lower, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. As far as the springs, we've increased those quite a bit to 1025 and 825, dampers to 5, anti-roll we've actually left on 3, because they're pretty much stiff enough on this car anyway. We've got neutral camber and tow, perhaps surprisingly given how fast the car is. And as I say in other occasions as well, you can give it a bit of camber if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. I just personally prefer my cars not to need it. But it's down to personal preference. We'll come back to the gearbox in just a second. As far as the diff, and again, this is highly changeable to personal driving style. For me personally, it works with a halfway initial torque setting and then the lowest acceleration and braking. But as I said, feel free to change those if you want to. As far as power, pretty simple, oil change and fit everything possible. I haven't fitted NOS, as you can see, but of course you could if you want to. That will by definition make it even quicker. And then for the weight, you want the full package. Unfortunately, it's not that lightweight a vehicle. It's not stupidly heavy, but it's pretty heavy compared to other cars in this series. And we've got the highest possible downforce, which isn't that high, but what can you do? Then finally for the gearbox, as I said, it's not a pure top speed tune, but of course you want to have some top speed for certain tracks like the Le Mans, for instance, or the Nordschleife, the Nürburgring, where you might need that top end speed a bit more, but not flat out 280 odd mile an hour, because that's just not really useful on most tracks. So you want an auto setting of 249, Then I would recommend individual gears of 3.8, 2.4, 1.7, 1.3, 1040 and 850, and I've opted for a final drive of 3.2. So as far as its power and torque goes, it's a relatively close setup. Certainly not a top speed setup. If you do need or want a bit more top end speed, then of course you could take that final drive in particular a bit lower, maybe down to 3 for instance. But for most tracks, this is good enough. So that's it for the tune, and of course there's plenty of variation because it's not a replica. So now all that remains is, of course, to take it out on a track. Now, it pretty much goes without saying that although this car is tuned to its absolute peak, it's not going to be a beginner-friendly vehicle. It's not bad handling, certainly not. It's remarkably good given how big, heavy and powerful the vehicle is, and that at the end of the day you wouldn't necessarily peg a muscle car as being an ideal choice of track vehicle, especially not given the other cars in this series, like the McLaren F1, the TVR Speed 12, various others like that. Surprisingly though, or perhaps not surprisingly to some, this is a remarkably good track car when tuned correctly, and with the advantages of stuff like weight loss, the flat floor, and those kind of things which really help out a muscle car. Overall, it's definitely a highly competitive machine, but of course in actual racing situations, you're going to be up against stuff like LMPs. So I'm not necessarily claiming that it's going to be the most useful build, it's more for the fun factor of having an extreme tune. But if you want to try and race it, of course, feel free. That's it overall though for this particular build, and of course if you'd like to check out more in the vein of this build, you can check out some of the previous Xtunes builds in the playlist at the end of this video. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.